Hi everyone. First of all, we would like to thank Text Story team for accepting our work and providing us all the support. Myself, Kumar Bandeli, along with co-authors Nihal Hussain and Nitin Agarwal. We are from Cosmos Group from University of Arkansas at Little Rock. We would like to present our research on describing a framework towards computational narrative analysis on blogs. The agenda of this presentation includes narrative, where we see how it is defined in the literature, along with an example. Next, we present motivation or goal for conducting this study. We talk a little bit about dataset used, along with its data collection methodology, and then we describe the methodology, along with analysis and results from the study. Finally, we end the presentation with conclusion and future work. In this slide, we discuss about how narrative is defined. In literature, narratives are defined in many ways, and we highlight a few definitions here. First, the definition from a very well-known social scientist named Franzosi. He says narrative text can be represented as directed graphs or networks of semantic triples, essentially meaning subject-verb-object sets. Second, Cohen and Shires say the distinguishing feature of narrative is its linear organization of events. Third, Tolan says a minimalistic definition of narrative might be a perceived sequence of non-randomly connected events. Of all the definitions here, we use the definition defined by Franzosi, and when we refer to narratives, we represent it as semantic triples of subject, verb, objects, and their extraction from the unstructured text. The following narrative example is from an existing study that shows a triplet network of crime highlighting the subject priest. We can notice that the subject priest is in the center of the network here. The other objects are on the periphery of the network. The words connecting the subject priest and the other objects shown with the dotted line are the verbs associated. Overall, we observe that the narrative about priest is on the negative side by referring to abuse, molest on girls and boys. Here we present the motivation behind this study. From our previous work published in Text Story Workshop in 2018, where we studied EU migrant crisis that happened during 2015-16 mainly, we saw that there was a change in sentiment towards migrants. As we can see in figure 1, initially the sentiment was positive, but later on the sentiment is flipped to become negative towards migrants. The images below here on the left, we see that refugees are welcomed initially, and on the right we see the refugees are not welcomed. Therefore, the goal of this study is to analyze the blogosphere to find narratives relating to migrants in Europe. Due to the polarizing view towards migrants, we would like to study what narratives we can detect and also present an approach towards a computational model. This paper aims to solve the following questions. First, to identify narratives computationally. Second, to detect dominant narratives and less dominant narratives. Third, to validate such a computational approach. Here we describe the data collection methodology, and the blogs are the starting point here. And in step 1, we explore the blogs to see whether they are crawlable or not. And in step 2, we actually train the crawler. And this is done using Web Content Extractor. It's a licensed tool to crawl the blogs. And the outcome of this step is we extract the metadata and the blog post information. And in step 3, we clean and store the data. As part of cleaning and storing, we remove any missing values and we perform data validation and verification, standardization, post-processing, and all of that. Once it is done, we push it to Block Trackers database, which is our in-house tool by Cosmos. Here we describe about the dataset, and the dataset is EU migrant crisis that happened between 2015 and 2016 primarily, and we had 22 blogs, and the blog posts were just over 6,000, and the entities were around 32,000. And the period of analysis includes from January 2015 to all the way till March 2016. Here we describe our methodology. The first step here is to have a list of documents. In our case, it is a list of blog posts. So from these blog posts, we extract entities. And when I say entities, these are named entities. And we used Alchemy API at the time of data collection. And Alchemy API was used to extract the named entities like person, organization, and location. So once we have these entities extracted, we feed this as an input to the topic modeling layer. And topic modeling in general is the process of identifying topics in a corpus with a set of documents. And here the set of documents is a set of blog posts. And there are multiple ways in which we can achieve this. And we used latent distributed allocation, which stands for LDA, in our framework. And in LDA, each document may be viewed as a mixture of topics, and each topic is a mixture of words. And when I say mixture of words, it is mixture of entities here. Therefore, in our framework, we use the network-based topic model just to filter the network into different topics so that we can study the narratives within each topic. And the documents within each topic are then further filtered based on topic percentage threshold so that we can capture the documents that are actually belonging to the topic. Okay, and in the first row, if you see the last box, we see there are different topics that are generated, and each topic has a list of entities in it. So once we have the topics, we move to the next step where we select the documents based on a threshold within a topic. And once we have the documents that are highly indicative of a topic, we then extract the sentences from these set of blog posts that are there within a topic. So once we have the sentences extracted, we apply NLP techniques such as POS tagging and chunking, primarily to obtain the noun and verb phrases. And once we have the phrase extraction method completed, we then define a grammar rule that captures or identifies the potential or candidate narratives. And once we have the rule defined and then we get a candidate or potential narratives, we then apply filter mechanism and scoring the sentences to further generate the actual narratives as part of narrative generation process. And we will go a little bit detail in the next few slides on some of the important components here. Here we describe why we have used a entity-based approach. As narratives are characterized by actors and actions, so we use noun phrases to extract the actors, which also cover entities. For the actions part, we use verb phrases. And the example shown here in the figure, these are some of the entities that are tagged in the text, which are of type person, organization, location. And at the time of data collection, we used Alchemy API for the entity extraction. Here we describe POS tagging and chunking. First, talking about POS tagging, it refers to parts of speech, which explains how a word is used in a sentence. And you can notice a simple example here, which tags different words in a sentence. Second, we would like to describe about chunking. It helps in extracting phrases from unstructured text. Instead of using simple tokens, which may not represent actual meaning of the text, it's always desirable to use phrases such as United Kingdom, for example, as a single word, instead of using United and Kingdom as separate words. In this example here, you can see that on the left, there is a noun phrase that is tagged together, combining 4 words. And also on the right, you can see that the cat is tagged as one single noun phrase. That's how chunking works. Here we describe the grammar rule. It helps in extracting noun phrases and verb phrases together forming a sentence. As you can see in the example here, it says, we saw the yellow dog. We becomes as part of one single noun phrase, and then saw becomes a verb, and then the yellow dog, the whole chunk becomes a noun phrase. Together it forms a sentence, and that's where grammar rule comes in and helps us to extract these sentences from the text. Below shown is the grammar rule defined as part of our study. I know it's a complex phenomenon that's happening here, but we were able to capture most of the phrases from the text to actually yield candidate sentence for narratives. Another important step in our framework is scoring sentences, and we used a TF-IDF mechanism, which stands for term frequency inverse document frequency. This basically ranks the sentences or the candidate narratives that we have identified after the grammar rule step. And by using the TF-IDF score, we are able to identify the dominant and less dominant narratives based on the TF-IDF score for each word within the sentence. The table here shows a list of narratives identified computationally using our methodology. So we selected top 30 blog posts that were published in January 2016 relating to a topic which talk about New Year's sexual assaults in Cologne. So the posts were selected based on a threshold of top 5% that were highly indicative of the topic. And the topic here is New Year's sexual assaults in Cologne. So from these 30 posts, we were able to extract more than 3,000 sentences and filter down to capture the semantic triples having actors and actions and towards the other actors. So using NLP techniques in our framework, we were able to obtain these candidate narratives. So from the narratives identified, we can notice that the blog posts that are discussed here are about migrants and the reactions by the local police in Cologne. Further, the narratives show that in Munich, a priest described that it has become a war zone. Finally, the discussions about how a political scandal is developing in Germany due to the attacks of scale is what we see here. Overall, we see narratives strongly talking about migrants and the consequences of allowing migrants in Europe. As part of evaluation, to validate our approach, we asked 3 human analysts to list at least 5 narratives in the decreasing order of their dominance, meaning the dominant narrative will be listed in the top and then the less dominant ones will be listed later from the 30 posts that were selected for evaluation. Later, we provided each one of the 3 analysts with the narratives identified from our framework to compare against their narratives. This effort resulted in almost 67% accuracy. And to compute the inter-annotator agreement among analysts, we used Criffender's alpha and obtained the alpha value of 0.82, which indicates almost perfect reliability. And please note that Criffender's alpha is a reliability coefficient to measure the agreement among analysts. And referring to the table here, we have 4 columns. First column is top K, and then we have precision, recall, and F measure. The main purpose of having this table is to see the total number of narratives that can be identified from blogs. Is K of 1 better, 2 better, 3 better, or 4, or even 5? So the goal is to find the optimal number of narratives that can be found from a blog post. So in the first row, you can see that there was only 1 narrative, and we tested against the human based narratives that were identified, and we got a high precision, but the recall was on the lower side, and hence the F measure was also on the lower side. As we progress, we identified that at the max of 5 narratives that were listed from the blog post, we achieved a highest F measure or accuracy of 67%. In conclusion, here we proposed a framework to identify narratives computationally and validate against human annotated narratives. We also looked at using existing NLP techniques and topic modeling approaches that can be used to identify narratives. And then our methodology ranks narratives as dominant and less dominant based on a scoring phenomenon. The limitations are shown here. First, the grammar rules that we have defined can be improved further to reduce noise. Second, the chunking, it needs trial and error process to obtain meaningful phrases. Third, the narratives that are generated may not be fully accurate, but they can definitely assist analysts to understand, even though they come with some noise. The future work is discussed here. First, the framework is only tested on a sample data. We can definitely conduct more rigorous experiments here. Second, the paper tries to identify narratives. We can extend the work to see how the narrative landscape over time will be. Third, with disinformation being a big threat to our society, the framework can be applied to see what narratives propagate during these campaigns. We gratefully acknowledge the support from different funding agencies here. Thank you very much for listening to the presentation. If you all have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.